Well, we'd like to start this. I'm Glenn Loop, Director of State Advocacy for the Premium Cigar Association. I'm joined on this call by our new CEO and Executive Director, Josh Habersky. See we've got three pillars of the Massachusetts retail community to join us. And I appreciate that. And we are recording this so that you know we will take questions, but we are recording this so that we can distribute it to your other brethren throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. The primary reason we're having this discussion is the onslaught and the prevalence and the consistent introduction of what are known as generational smoking bans or nicotine-free generation proposals throughout the Commonwealth. This legislation obviously was spawned originally in New Zealand. Those born after X date, sometimes they fluctuate between January 2007 or 2009, shall not be able to ever buy a nicotine associated product. That means obviously doesn't matter if you've got a 21 age law. It doesn't matter if that person turns 50 years old and they want to go to a golf course and buy a cigar. If they were born after that date, they would not be able to legally buy a tobacco product. When the New Zealand government changed, that proposal was shoved aside, but that didn't stop it from spreading to other parts of Europe and other parts around the world. And it was originally introduced in the United States a year ago, almost two, in California. The proposal was quickly withdrawn. Since the Massachusetts phenomenon began to take hold, it was actually introduced this past year in, of all places, Tennessee. Unusual to see a proposal of that nature introduced in a southern state. As I characterize it, this is just a demonstration of how bad ideas spread. Uh, all it takes is one place to plant a seed, and others decide that they would like to follow suit. That's obviously taken place in Massachusetts. With what's happened in Reading, Wakefield, Stoneham, Melrose, and a new effort in Newton and Concord, we now know, and according to some of our industry coalition partners, and we'll talk more about them in a second, there are basically 50 targeted communities in Massachusetts that are preparing or can expect to see this type of a proposal. 50. We cross-reference those 50 communities with our PCA lists, both active and inactive members, and came up with 11 of our premium shops or suppliers or members that could also be affected, 11 out of the 50. Um, and they're spread out. So far, though, none of the places that the proposal has taken hold affect premium cigar shops that are PCA members or in our database. Um, what we did was we launched a petition that we hope, and a cornerstone of this message today is we hope all of the retailers in Massachusetts will spread and generate that on their own and use that petition to go to their own consumer database list. This is a message that is replicating similar a message that was launched by the National Association of Tobacco Outlets. Um, they're an industry association partner of ours. They launched a grassroots consumer effort using their network that primarily is the Petroleum and Marketers Association, or a state affiliate of the National Association of Convenience Stores, to reach their consumer base, because obviously they're involved in advocating for um, nicotine products across the board: cigarettes, big tobacco, small filtered tobacco products, alternative tobacco products, you name it, they touch the entire product category. What we did with our petition was we narrowed it to the products that are really principally represented by the premium cigar community, premium cigar and pipes, if you will. And we tailored that, distributed that petition. I think it's now gone out twice to all the retailers in the state. We hope that you spread it. I don't think it's been an overwhelming response, but what we are doing is we're keeping those and we're going to dump them all in mass to each respective local government that's affected by this, and also to their respective state legislators that we correlate by zip code to the response to the petition. So we want to encourage that. If we do anything else, that's to get the message across. There's the audience. With the way that it's obviously very awkward, and it's from my understanding that this is not the case statewide, but for the most part, these boards of health, they're unelected, and that's a cornerstone of our message. These are unelected boards that have tremendous authority and power, um, appointed by the local government, but then rather autonomous from the actions and whims and opinions of the local government. So, for example, the NATO petition goes to all of the boards of health, but it also goes to the locally elected officials over that board of health, and we're adding to the members of the state legislature that are also over those local governments. So we're trying to hit each category, each level of government, from the unelected ranks of the boards of health to the localities overseeing board of supervisors or city council, and then making sure that state legislators are aware of the feelings of their constituents on these proposals. So please circulate that to your consumer base. You can access it today, right now, at cigaraction.org. Cigaraction.org. And the response to Massachusetts generational smoking bans is on there, and you can use that link to circulate to your consumer database.
And Glenn, the specific link is in the chat. I submitted that to the chat.
Thank you. So even if your community is not currently subject to a generational smoking ban, nicotine-free generation proposal, even if they're not, it is critically important that you voice your opposition to such proposals now on the front end of this entire debate. So we highly encourage you to contact your local elected officials so that they know of your opposition. This is a small business issue. It's not a tobacco issue. It's not a nicotine addiction issue. The science is clearly on our side on these matters. And well, I'll get into this in a second, how this correlates to um, state legislation. It's also critically important that you articulate your opposition to your state legislators, your members of the House and Senate in Boston, making sure that they know of your opposition. With that, Representative Paul Frost, who's a Republican member of the legislature, introduced House Bill 2166, which would remove the authority of these boards of health from enacting such proposals. It's a long shot piece of legislation, but it sends a resounding message that it even exists. I've been in discussions with staff of Paul Frost, and apparently he's in a tight reelection campaign. But should he return to the state legislature, he has pledged to reintroduce this bill in January. Also, it's significant in that, in terms of just basically the keeping it alive type of measure. On July 1st, this bill was referred for further study by the Public Health Committee. So granted, it's a long shot type of measure, but just the fact that it exists sends a good message. We're looking also, if the bill is refiled in January to assisting with finding some bipartisan support with that. We do have allies in the Democratic Party and in the state legislature of Massachusetts. We just finished our second annual cigar event for the National Conference of State Legislatures in Louisville, Kentucky. Last year, when we did this in Indianapolis, we had a very, very strong contingent from the House and the Senate and the legislature attend that event. So basically, we got some cigar smoking brethren out there, and they've been responsive on some other issues of the day. So with that, I just wanted to throw that out as a part of our comprehensive strategy, and that's H2166. And so we hope that you will also support that with your members of the state legislature. We want to highlight sort of the messaging campaign, and I want to hold this up. This is a part of the National Association of Tobacco Outlets proposal, public outreach. I'm just throwing that up as an example. And we can generate some point of sale materials as well for you to use just to display as to your customers to bring about an air of general awareness about the issue and how dangerous this is. This sets truly a horrible national precedent. I mean, if it takes foot the way it has there, we end up fighting 90 to 100 proposals in a state instead of one state legislature. And that brings us full circle back to the importance of a bill like 2166 to try to stop us at the state level. Also, the industry is considering some other types of legislation to bring attention to uh, tobacco 21. Obviously, the industry had mixed feelings about that, but now that it's pretty much the law of the land across the country, T21 ought to be the end of the end all be all and the answer to all this. That if you're properly enforcing 21 at the cash register, the industry is doing its part to prevent underage youth access. Plus, we all know that premium handmade cigars and pipe tobacco are not attractive to America's youth or the youth of Massachusetts. We've got the studies to clearly indicate that and point that out to elected officials. Last year, well, I'll get to this in just a second. Um, we've got the evidence, we've got the research. We pointed out in our petition that we can provide this for every single locally elected official in the Commonwealth. So we're not hiding anything about the public health implications, the public health questions, youth access. We know the data and studies really on our side. We also know that the definitive national studies that indicate that the primary way that America's youth are getting their hands on nicotine products is not at the cash register, even at the convenience store level. It's through quote social sources. Socials, that means they're getting Uncle Bob to buy it for them, or the guy they give them $10 to outside a convenience store to buy it for them. It's not because of lack of enforcement at the retail level. So we know the evidence is clearly on our side on each of these questions, and we're articulating that to your locally elected officials. But again, it goes back to this notion and reality that we're dealing with these basically independent boards of health on these types of questions. It's important that they get pushback from your locally elected officials and your state legislators, knowing how this could impact your premium cigar shop. So, with that, I'm going to be quiet for just a second. But before I do, I want to highlight that we are monitoring two proposals for tax increases in Massachusetts. You're the only place in the nation right now that's got tax increases on the table, but they've been on the table since really February of 2023. H 1848 and Senate Bill 2763. The Senate bill is sponsored by John Keenan, and the House bill is sponsored by Marjorie Decker. Spontaneously, this legislation received a hearing back last summer. We filed a joint piece of testimony to this, which I'll throw up purely as visual aid with our partners at Cigar Rights of America, indicating why it would be an incredibly flawed proposition to take your OTP tax from 40 to 80% of the wholesale price. I highlight this to you purely, one, because I've got you all together right now, and two, because this proposal, even though it hasn't moved a lot since last summer with a hearing, that it is technically still alive. And also, it was on June 17th, it was also referred to the Revenue Committee for further study. This probably means it'll be introduced in a identical form when they reconvene in January. So I just wanted to put that out there that we're also monitoring this tax increase proposal, knowing how it would impact the industry, the retail community in the Commonwealth. So with that, that kind of puts the cards on the table in terms of strategy. We are working with our industry partners at the Cigar Association of America, the National Association of Tobacco Outlets, the National Association of Convenience Stores, and hope I get their name right. It's close. The New England Petroleum and Marketers Association, which is really the convenience store market that covers really everything from Massachusetts up through Maine. So we've got a broad-based coalition that also includes some players in the big tobacco arena. We did have conversations with them during the most recent this week conversations at the National Conference of State Legislatures in Kentucky. They are deeply attuned to this subject. They know what a threat it is to their markets and their products. But obviously, I think it affects ours more dramatically because we truly represent the small business element within the Commonwealth.